So the next presentation will be actually the project that started the entire idea of having our symposium today. And I should say just a few words before I hand it all over to those who really are working on it. So throughout my research, I'm convinced that with the focus on the cultural entanglements created by constant mobility and connectivity, we create much more of a dynamic and emergent history than standard narratives usually provide us with. For instance, we still often talk about the Edo period or Tokugawa period, about Shinokoku and Sakoku and all these old narratives of a very static society. And certainly we know so much better by now. So how can we do it? How can we describe a new type of history, a much more of a dynamic history, also in our textbooks, in our classroom, and so forth? How can we do that? And one way of doing it, or to describe any type of society, right? It's not only the past, but even the current. Social network analysis has been one of the tools that has been used in order to think about the dynamics, time, space, things are changing all the time, and in order to bring up that type of idea. So that is one of the things that thinking about connections, links, entanglements, networks might be one way of how to approach it. Another agenda that I always had in my research was gender, the idea and notion of gender. The focus on gender as a meaningful way to describe the past is still absent in many disciplines within Japanese studies. Marginalized or regarded as an exogenous variable as its own field of study, like gender studies, certainly exist, but it's hardly ever integrated long-term, not just for one volume that we work on or for maybe one article where we put in gender as one of it. Usually we are still gender blind when it comes to it, thinking about the larger dynamics in history. Even new handbooks of Japanese history add maybe one sentence, oh, and then there were women too. Or there was an issue about gender, but not really considered as such at all. So my real question is then how to describe the gendered past of a dynamic society. And here is when I started thinking about networks and trying to come up with a database to create the idea of something that is not just static and still, but something that moves and we can look at it. And one way, of course, is to look at personal narratives. Narratives by men, narratives by women, who describe their lives. And through that, we might have a better look into society as it was in the past, or even it is in the present. We see, of course, in social studies, people have been working on that, and in all kinds of disciplines. But nonetheless, I still think that we need to work on it. So that's how the entire project about having a biographical or relational database started in 2010 or 11. Not even quite sure when it began. And it was on and off. It is now my real pleasure to have, I've always been surrounded by very talented people, either my own students or people that came through Sophia at one point or another, people that I met at different places that I was able sort of to lure into my project and that they would start helping me. We started with a reading group as well, and then some of you here, fortunately, are also part of my reading group, and I should probably also introduce everyone here. First of all, also my kakenhi, because funding is important. Yes, we have, fortunately, a kakenhi. It's our third year starting in April, and we have Shimizu sensei and Takahashi sensei and Asano. As I said, oh yes, she switched us. So all three of my kakenhi members are here, where we are trying to find out about the networks of the Kaitokudo in Osaka. So we will see what that will come up with. So I'm very excited about this project. Then from my reading group, we have Umezawa sensei is here, and Kei Rowley sensei may have just stepped out. So we have at least two of them here today presented. And then, of course, all my helpers, the ones that are going to give the presentations today, is the current programmer, Leo Born, and who is at the University of Heidelberg in computational linguistics. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And it's wonderful that he has been working on this new framework. Then we have Asano Yūsuke, who has been with the database, I guess almost from the very beginning, helping in really also creating data. Himself, he's actually a specialist in the Sengoku period. Nonetheless, he came over at least to help with that. Outside we have Shimada-san, who also is part of the team in feeding the database. Today also we have an MA student here, Toby Clover, who will be one of the first when we try DH in the classroom. As I said, I'm worried about that, but he'll be there to support. So thank you. So with that in mind, we should get started right away.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Professor Oka. Yes, so the theoretical part has been covered, at least for the most part. For our concern today, we would like to discuss the technical details behind the database and the web application used to access that database. We'll also talk about how we can use that. It was just mentioned, classroom usage use is one of the primary goals in the near future. But we'll be showing a short demonstration on how to actually visualize the social networks that we have in that database, which my colleague Asano-san will cover in the latter part of the presentation. At that point we will switch to Japanese, so please bear with us, it will be a bilingual talk. As Professor Oka said, a short background on me. I'm a master's student in computational linguistics at Heidelberg University. So from my own personal background, I'm not either a web developer or a Japanese studies specialist. I just have the advantage of being half Japanese, so I can at least work with a lot of the things that we are dealing here with. And I started programming for the web a couple of years ago for other projects, and I always try to I'll challenge myself, learn new things, and try to contribute to projects such as this. So therefore, a short overview of what we'll be doing today. First I will present you the overall database structure and the web application. Most of it will be plain text, boring technical stuff. Please bear with us through that. The flashy parts come at the end when we actually demonstrate the application. Afterwards, we'll shortly talk about the challenges that we face right now and might possibly face in the near future, as well as our plans on how to go from where we are right now. And as I said, the last part will be a live demonstration. So the idea is to model relations between people, so therefore historical social networks. One of the easiest ways to model such kind of information is as a relational database. So therefore we decided to use PostgreSQL as the relational database management system in the background from the very beginning. Seemed well suited. It still proved to be well suited for this task. And we started with 26 tables in total that were under 6 top-level categories, which you can see on the table over there. As you can see, we focused on people, of course, and their interactions as encapsulated by correspondences and meetings. Those are subsumed in the latter half of the talk as events. So events are correspondences and meetings right now, and we had further information pertaining to places people have been and their activities. And one table for the sources that we use, so that's, I think the current statistics are a little bit off. It should be around 50 sources right now that were manually compiled and from which data was manually extracted and input into the database over the past 6-7 years by my esteemed colleagues Asano-san and Shimada-san. So just to give you a quick overview of the main numbers here, we currently have a network starting with Yūsuke and his family and social acquaintances that encompasses 2,200 people and around 7,000 events between those people. And as you can see, this covers the top half of the table, but we still have around 6,700 entries in the activities table. And that's a table that proved to be quite problematic during actual data input over the past few years, because the activities model too many distinct phenomena. So they include career choices, career developments when they quit, when they get appointed in office, but it also includes address changes when they move to someplace. It includes kinship information, with whom they were related, and so on. So we ended up having this one huge table containing all, of course, necessary information, but since they had to be kind of fit into that one structure of the activities table, we ended up a lot with redundant data, actually. Plus, we also had the problem of defining unique keys, for example, which becomes quite important when querying the database later on through the web application. As Professor Oka already mentioned, the development kind of stagnated at one point for 2 or 3 years, at which point then, at the time when I came in, it was decided that given the both the problems with the database structure as well as the web application, I should have said that it was based on Java servlets, which is in the world of web technologies quite outdated. So we wanted to have both a new database structure and a new web application. That decision was made by the end of 2016, if I remember correctly. Yeah, there it says. And our idea was and still is to achieve the same as as Harvard University's China Biographical Database has done for Chinese studies, namely creating a rich and powerful database that can be used in many ways for network visualization and geographical information systems, for example. They were kind enough to provide us with a database template of theirs, which we received also by the end of 2016. And from there on, the basic procedure for us was to migrate the data from the old 26 database tables to now to over 90 tables. We will come back to that point later on. This is still a work in progress. However, the bulk of the data pertaining to persons and events specifically has already been transferred. As I said, with the refinement of the database structure, it also was quite natural to modernize the web application with it. So therefore, we did both starting in fall 2016 and made it public as the Japanese biographical database in fall of last year. And I will show you what it is and what you can do with it a little bit later on. Some technicalities right here. As I said, the previous web application was Java-based. It ran on Apache Tomcat. And a lot of it was hard-coded and didn't use a lot of plugins. So extending the functionality was quite difficult. And we opted for a more modularized approach with the new application. Going with the current flow of web programming standards, we chose to implement everything in JavaScript. Thus, it runs on a Node.js server, and both front end and back end are also implemented in JavaScript frameworks, namely front end in Angular, and in the back end we have Loopback. The nice thing about Loopback actually is, as some people of you might know, Angular is a so-called, follows the so-called model view controller design pattern. Basically meaning that you have a model for one of your database tables. You have a view that shows that to the user, and you have a controller that gets the information from the database to show the user. Now usually you'd have to put a lot of effort into that to create all these components. Luckily, Loopback does that more or less in one step. It actually requires 2 steps, but the second step is just 1 line of code, so that's quite easy. So we can automatically generate models from the database, and with that already have the a functioning RESTful API actually to query the database, which we can use for our web application, but it can also be used for other services or databases to query our data later on in any standardized format such as JSON. So much for the nerd out. The server we use is currently Ubuntu 12. It's in the middle of being upgraded to Ubuntu 16 server, so we have a little bit longer term support coming forth. And the URL that you see over there, network-studies.org, is the address under which you will find that. Before we go to that, however, I would like to point out some challenges we currently face and probably will also continue to face in the future. As I said, we migrated a lot of the data, but still some data needs to be migrated. The difficult thing about that part of the data that hasn't been migrated yet is the aforementioned data redundancy. So we have to make sure either not to override correct data or to doubly input data, and we also have to make our priorities a little bit sure, because I'm the only programmer currently, so I cannot do everything on my own, and I just have to, we just need a plan on which data needs to be prioritized, which has been figured out until now, and we're in the process of actually migrating some of the rest of the data. Furthermore, in the database template we received from Harvard University, there were some preliminary geographical data, for example. However, some of the data needs some cleanup, so that is also something that we need to do in the future, just to get correct coordinates, for example, and to map all the places that are associated with coordinates with the places we manually input over the past 6-7 years. So we can easily integrate a GIS component, for example, later on. Another thing that becomes challenging in the future is, since 2,200 people input over 7 years is impressive for humans, of course, but it doesn't get us really as far as the scope of the China biographical database, for example. And it has often been pointed out that what the CBDB did was to get their hands on digitized text and automatically extract biographical data in events. So in light of still lacking digitized text, that is also one challenge. How do we get those texts? Plus, how do we process them in such a way that we can automatically extract the information we want in a somewhat reliable and accurate manner. Another thing that then comes to mind is how do we acquire and or integrate other resources, because currently we focus mainly on biographical metadata actually, but we don't provide the texts, nor do we have any images, for example, related to people and their resources. So that might be a point in the future where we could opt for IIIF compliance and therefore integrate such other digitized resources as well. Another thing that I feel worth mentioning, at least in Japan, is currently the website is best viewed on a laptop or a desktop PC. It's not really optimized towards mobile devices. However, many people, especially in Japan, mainly use their mobile devices, be it their smartphone or tablet, to access that. If we want to open up the possibility of having many also non-scholars participate and see the database, it should be thought about having a mobile view for that, so not everybody has to get their laptops out just to access the page and see everything as intended. In the near future, or not just the near future, but also in the overall far-reaching future, what we try to do with this Japanese biographical data is to provide a research tool, simply in the beginning for just research and looking up people and who they are, what they did. From that on, you can go farther than the individual people and look at the groups they interacted in, easily identify their social and familial ties, visualize that, map it on an actual map to see how the networks moved and developed over the centuries. That is one of the bigger goals. Another one, as was mentioned already before, is to use that as a teaching tool in seminars. So this spring onwards, we will be using that in a seminar actually here at Sophia University, where the intention is to encourage students to research their own networks of interest, because that can, for us, be a very handy way to acquire new data. Shouldn't say that out too loud, but however I just did. And also, depending on how far the database gets in terms of data in the future, it might also be valuable to make it more appealing to students to learn about history and the people interacting over the centuries, because it's just a lot more visually pleasing to have graphs in front of oneself instead of books. So I was told, at least. Therefore, acquiring data not just through seminars, we would also like to aim for crowdsourcing, as was brilliantly done in the Mina de Honkoku project that Hashimoto Sensei already introduced, so that we could open that up to an interested general audience, and also include the possibility of having them add and edit information in the database. Fairly recently, we also started thinking about making it linked open data, so we can integrate it with other already available open data, and also provide that to other people following that standard interested in our data set. In the near future, from a more technical standpoint, we will probably implement more advanced features for the network visualization. You'll see how that looks currently in a moment, as well as a GIS component to see how that looks on a map. Now, I think this was the keyword to actually access that, since the internet is not working here. I opted to use the local version. Yeah, that's the local version. It's fine like this. Thank you. So imagine that this is the screen you get when you access network-studies.org and not localhost, because that will definitely not work on your machine. So let me just do this here. So we have a bilingual interface, Japanese and English currently. It defaults to Japanese. I can switch that to English for a second here. And although, since we're not in the EU here, we don't have a cookie reminder or a cookie notifier. However, some of the settings, such as the language settings, do get saved as cookies. So for a smooth user experience, please turn cookies on for that, but don't eat them. Now, the front page is a simple informational page that gives you an idea of what this project is about. A lot of that is related to what I just mentioned. And it's also backed by the same database with some kind of preliminary or very stupid content management system like tables, so that news information such as the reading group meetings can be input. Apart from the front page view, the biggest, or one of the bigger views is the actual database view that just lists all the people's events and sources that are in here. They can be queried currently only via their real names or primary names. We do, if we look at one entry, we do also note other names that historical individuals were identified with. However, currently the search does not catch up with that, so be careful. It only recognizes any matching words or characters in the primary names. And yes, this is Yūsuke, our main protagonist currently, and his detail page. And I won't delve into the database view much more. Instead, I'd like to show or go over to the network visualizations. For that, I have to log in, and sorry, Professor Oka, for your login. Because currently the network visualization is not open access. Only people that have a user account, currently that is we, the team members, can access that. But that will shortly change as well as we get rid of some of the bugs and add some new features to that tool. So the visualization tool has basic settings page in the beginning, where we can choose the persons to visualize in three ways. First, self-explanatory all, which shows you all the people that are in the database and how they are connected. You can also search for specific people by searching for them, or you can select them by source. This is what we are going to do now. So Asano-san will explain to you the following network in a moment. We need to get a Hokakubun, which is some sort of name registry. And what this setting basically does is that it gets all the people that are in this source from our database, and then shows you these people plus all the people they had any interactions with. So currently the interactions, as I said, are based on events, so correspondences and meetings. Later when we have kinship data, these also will be reflected. We can highlight the nodes by gender or umare no mibun. Let's keep it like this. We can visualize the intensity of connections. Those just simply people who had, or two people that met more or wrote to each other more, have stronger connections in the network than those who did less so. Let's put that on. Visualize importance of persons is based on the graph theoretical concept of centrality. Currently we have two centrality measures, degree centrality and eigenvector centrality. We'll keep it at degree centrality, which just means that the more connections one person has, the more important that person is considered in the network. Last but not least, I won't go into the other settings. We'll add a time slider that allows you to filter the network by year. And now click on, wait a second, let me just switch back to Japanese. Since Asano-san's part will be Japanese, I will prepare that, and that was it for my part. I will now leave the rest up to Asano-san. Thank you very much.
I'm Asano, and I'm not good at speaking English, so I'll speak in Japanese. I hope you will 忖度ということで、微妙に日本語が入ったところで私の方から日本語で説明をさせていただきたいのですけれども、ただいま、イントロダクションの岡先生のご報告にありました通り、私どもの、主な研究課題というのが江戸時代における人的なネットワークというふうなところがございます。で、ただいま、ボルンさんにも指摘していただいた通り、それをどうやってデータ上深めていくかですね、それが現状の中での課題となっています。で、今、ボルンさんに江戸文学部の方での検索画面を立ち上げていただいているんですけれども、 こちらの方ですね、主に赤色で表示されている人名があるかと思います。こちらの赤で表示されている人名が、江戸法学部というふうな資料に出てくるものであります。で、その法学部というふうな資料が一体どのような性質かといいますと、デジタルと言っときながら私はものすごくアナログな人間ですので、今資料を、こちらにコピーで持ってきているんですけれども、これ実は言いますと国会図書館の、デジタル資料の方で、すでにもう、アップがされているものであります。で、中を見ていきますとですね、すいません、小さくて申し訳ないんですけれども、ですね、ちょっと見づらいんですけれども、最初の頃にですね、地名が書かれています。江戸の地名が書いてあって、そこから、住んでいる人、当時住んでいた文化人であるとか、あとはですね、中には大名の、続き柄にあたる人とかも混じっています。で、そういうふうな形で住んでいた人と、あとその人の別称ですね、別の名前と、それから、日本橋の中で一体どこに住んでいたかっていうふうなことが書かれています。で、名前の方を見ていくと、三角だったりとか四角みたいな、記号が書かれている場合があります。で、これはですね、この江戸法学部というふうな資料が、この記号によってですね、人名がどういうふうな、職業になっていたか、いわゆるどういうふうなことをなりわいにして生きていたのかというふうなことが分かるように、している資料です。で、実を言うとこの、記号の中にはですね、彼はもう死んでいます、個人ですっていうふうな記号もあったりもするので、必ずしも、生きていた人とは限らないんですけれども。ということで、こちらの方の説明に戻っていきたいと思います。このような形で赤字で表示されている人名なんですけれども、黒字の方は、法学部の方には出てきていないんですね。で、内修正の方が今これ真ん中に出てきてしまっているんですけれども、こちらについては、このプロジェクト自体が来春水を結構中心に置いているところもありますので、こちらは、メインに置かせていただいているというふうな状況です。で、今申しましたとおり、江戸法学部の方なんですけれども、基本的にですね、人名、それから住所、それから彼らが行っていた、文化的な活動の内容、この3つがメインで、記されているものです。で、それもずらずらっと情報が書かれているわけなんですね。なので、それだけを見ていくと、一見すると人名と人物と人物同士の交渉の内容っていうのはあんまり見えてこないように思えるんです。で、それをですね、このような形で図式化して、でそれでですね、この背景には、この黒の人名とかもそうですけれども、人名法学部の方に出てくる人名の中にはですね、いくつか著名な人物とかも上がっていたりとかもして、学者とかも混じっているんですが、その法学部に載っている学者のですね、その他の関連資料というふうなものを、データベースの方に落とし込んでいくことによって、こういうふうな形で、ネットワークが見えてくるわけであります。で、これちょっと画面の方では今出てはいないんですけれども、このビジュアライゼーションを作るにあたってはですね、法学部以外にも、来春生に関わる日記資料であるとか、あとはこちらに出てきている滝沢馬琴とかのですね、関連の資料というふうなものをいくつかデータベース上に落とし込んであります。で、そういった、データの蓄積、大体のところ人名の蓄積でございますけれども、それを蓄積していくことによってこのように生まれてくるわけなんですが、一人人名を取り上げていきますと、柴野立山というふうな人名がこちらの方にいるかと思います。いわゆる寛政年間ですね、吉間制度において、学問の指導者になった人物でありますけれども、彼もですね、法学部の方に登場してきます。でもちろん彼もですね、当然人名と、具体的にどういうふうな文化的な活動をしたのかっていうような記号しか書いてありません。で、彼のここもう今ボルさんにも押していただいてるんですけれども、を見ていくとですね、彼とですね、具体的に文通であるとか、あとは面会をしていた、人物の一覧がズバッと挙げられてくるわけです。で、人名が面会した人物で交流を持った人物が挙げられて、括弧の中にはですね、その交流の件数というふうなのが上がっています。で、この件数というのは今確定ではありません。まだ、来春水の関連の資料しかメインに入れてないというところがありますし、あと来春水の資料自体も、今入れている途中ですので、今後まだ増えていくというふうな可能性がございます。 で、こちらの方でですね、まず、来春水の方の件名の方をクリックしていただきますと、ここからですね、春水との面会記録というふうなものが見えてまいります。こちらの方がメインで入れているのが、完成とか店名年間ですね。ちょうど、来春水といいますと、広島藩の中の藩主ですので、広島藩お伺いの、従者ですので、いつも江戸にいるわけではなかったんですね。基本的に広島と江戸を行ったり来たりしているわけなんですけれども、彼がですね、春水が江戸にいた時に、芝の律団とあった記録というふうなのが残っているので、こんな感じで面会記録がバーッと出てくるわけです。で、その中でですね、一つ多めに上がっている10人っていうふうなところを、データベースで表示というふうなところで見ていきますと、このような形で集会の情報が出てきます。で、この集会の情報というのは、来春水が書いた春水日記というふうなところから持ってきたものです。なので、法学部とはまた別なところですね。で、それを見ていきますとですね、服部先生のところへ行ったというふうに書いてあります。で、会合を設けたというふうなことも書いてあるわけなんですが、そこの会合の中の参加者メンバーですね。メインにあたる人物の服部立斎というふうな学者にプラスアルファでですね、いくつかこのような形でズバッと、学者が挙げられているわけです。岡田寛斎であるとか、柴野律山といったそういった受者名が並んでいます。で、これを見ていくことでですね、時間大丈夫ですかね。
私だった。大丈夫です。
これを見ていくことによってですね、江戸法学部にプラスアルファで、データベースの方に、日記とか、あとは書簡といった類の資料を入れていくことによって、江戸法学部っていうふうなものをいわゆるなんですか、人名作品的に使って、法学部に出てくる人名から、人物の面会情報っていうふうな感じでいろいろと、使い方を広げていくことができるというふうなことになります。で、もちろん、春水日記にとっての、法学部の使い方っていうのも逆の場合もしかりなので、相互に、資料の使い方とか資料の、読み方、それからですね、いわゆる資料を、どのような資料を発送していくことによって、彼らの人脈がどのように見えてくるかというふうなことが、これを見ていくと、作業を進めていくと、明らかになっていくというふうなところになります。で、現時点での、課題というふうなところでちょっと申し上げておきますと、今、この画面の中ではですね、中というふうな部分があると思います。これは服部先生へお返しというふうに書いてあるんですけど、これは、春水日記の中の、引用文そのままにしてあるんですけれども、これがですね、現状このデータベースですと、入力者ごとのですね、やはり統一というのがまだあまりきちっと取れていないところもあったりしてですね、資料をそのまま引用するか、それとも英文表記も、本当は英文表記もですね、一緒に入れていきたいんですけれども、それとセットにして入れていくにというふうなことを、メインにしていきたいのですが、それがなっていないというふうな状況だったりするので、ここの中の部分を、充実化させていくと、よりですね、多くの方にアクセス、そして利用していただくことができるようになるかなというふうに考えている次第であります。で、もう一つですね、課題の方があるんですけれども、もう一個の課題の方は、今、人名の方からですね、面会リストというふうなものをパッと出しましたけれども、その人名のデータの方についても課題があります。今のところですね、ここの人名で出ているのはですね、主に、いわゆる生年と没年、それから、この人物のいわゆる経歴を書くにあたっての、転居となるような資料とか辞典類というふうなことを、参考文献、いわゆる論文の中の参考文献のような形でこうやって上げていっているわけなんですけれども、具体的にこの日記の中のどのようなところに出てくるかとか、あとはですね、この出典の内容からですね、この人名の、情報というふうなものを充実させていって、こちらも本当は中のようなものをつけたいんですけれども、その中の書き方というふうなものをどのようにですね、このデータベースの中の、中の書き方、人名の情報というのに合わせていくかというふうなところが、課題になっています。ですので、今ちょっと2つほど、課題を挙げたところで私は何もというふうなところなんですけれども、このようにまだ未完成な状態で今作業を進めているというようなところもありますので、 今後ですね、展望というふうなものとか課題というふうなものはまだまだたくさん出てくるかと思います。皆様からのご指摘をいただければと思います。ありがとうございます。